Hi guys, it's Kelly here and I'm back again with another video. This video is featuring some products from Altenew. We are going to be using a couple of different 3D embossing folders, the Poinsettia cluster, the gentle butterfly, the Berried Cotoneaster, and I have used the Poinsettia. I think I've used all of them before, actually. But we're going to be talking about how you can add metallics to your 3D embossing folders. These are some of the new inks that Altenew just came out with. The color families I'm using today are Sugarplum, Glacier Caves, and then this one is not new, but I am also using it, and this is the Frosted Foliage. So we're going to do some ink blending first. I like to do my ink blending twice. I feel like it gives me the best blend. And so I'm going to do ink blending before I do my 3D embossing, and then I'm going to do my second round of ink blending after I do the embossing, just to kind of help those images kind of pop out. This is regular colored cardstock, regular type of cardstock. It's 80 pound Neenah Solar White. This is like my go-to for what I use in almost all of my card making because it's the one that I prefer for my coloring. Though we won't have any, I know it's shocking, we won't have any coloring in this video. At least not with alcohol markers. We will have a little bit of other things though. So I really, really like 3D embossing folders. I don't know if you've picked up on that from some of the videos that we've been doing around here lately. I love the texture that they create. I think that they're really beautiful, and Altenew has some of the best ones for really detailed images. And so I do have a handful of them. Before we go too much further, I do want to say Altenew is really great about having sales, and they are actually having a weekly sale. There's like a section, I'll link it down below, there's like 45% off. The butterfly and the Berried Cotoneaster are not included, but the Poinsettia is, and you can get that 3D embossing folder for less than $5 just this week while it's on sale. But there's plenty of other 3D embossing folders in there, as well as some stencils and dies and things like that. So going through doing the ink blending, this one I learned my lesson really quickly. The darkest color, because they are so richly pigmented, you really don't need a lot. You don't need a lot at all. And so you'll see when I'm going through, this is the Glacier Caves color family. These blues, you guys, stop it. It's so pretty. It's so, so pretty. But when I get out to the sapphire, which is the darkest color in this color family, like I picked up some on my brush and then I never went back to it. Like I just took the rest of it right off my desk because it's just so pigmented. But basically the game plan that I had going into this was I really wanted to show different ways that you can add metallics because we all have different things in our arsenal. And you can get a similar look with different products. So you may have something you may already own something that you could possibly do this with. And if you do, then I wanted to show you, basically how that would work, and you wouldn't necessarily need to pick up anything else. Because I think that metallics are a really great way to highlight these kind of 3D embossing. I think metallics honestly are a great way to highlight anything, but especially these more detailed embossing folders I think are beautiful. Here, this is that darkest color, and you can see how I'm just like pulling it right off of my glass mat, and that is going to be enough to get me the darkest color. And then the same thing for this one. Here, I'm kind of messing around with it because this folder goes at a diagonal, but not at like a true diagonal, and I wanted my embossing to be in the most pigmented part of my card. So here I'm going at a diagonal, but it's not perfectly diagonal. It's more of like an arc, maybe. You'll see. So in ink blending these, you can see that for the most part, I'm coming in off of the edges. For this one, there was much more in the middle that I needed to get. So in order to do that, I am picking up the color, I'm kind of dabbing it onto my glass mat and then taking it to the center so that I can get more pigment in the middle without having big old blotches of color, that I'm still going to have a really smooth blend. So that's just a tip there. But anywho, these were super fun to make. I actually made them over a month ago. So funny. I knew, I was like, okay, these are going live on the 12th. I have to have them ready to go on the 12th. Well, I made them on the 12th, and then I went to go schedule them on the 12th, and I couldn't find the email with all of the information for the release. And I was like, where's this email? And then I had to go back to look to, see like the confirmation email. And it was actually December 12th and not November 12th. And I made them on November 12th. So these have been sitting here just waiting to be shared for quite some time. So now that the first round of ink blending is done, I'm going to spritz the back of it, not the front of it, spritz the back of it. Then I'm going to put them in their embossing folder. I'm going to make sure they're lined up the way that I want them to look. And then I am going to tape this is the Satin tape from Altenew. I'm going to tape my folders closed. This is just going to make sure that my paper isn't sliding about, especially for like this one with the butterfly, because Altenew is very generous with their sizing, which I think is fantastic, because then you can always make it a little bit different. I messed around with it a lot to get the butterfly in on the card, as much butterfly as I could, while not losing my greenery. And so I did mess around with this quite a bit, but then once I have it where I want it, I'll be able to tape it, and it's not going to move as I run it through my Spellbinders Platinum. So that's just a tip there. If you want to make sure your stuff isn't going to move, just tape it. For the it's so hard to say, and it was so hard to say the first time I made it. The Berried Cotoneaster, I think is how you say it. Anyway, this is that one that, like I said, is at like kind of that, it's at a diagonal, but not a true diagonal. Anyway, so I ended up messing around with this until I could get it to where I want it to be, and then I taped this as well, ran them through, and then I will go back in with my next round of ink blending. Doing the second round of ink blending is really just going to give me a lot more detail that will pop out, because I'm going to be layering the ink on top of what is now the embossing. So all those little nooks and crannies are going to be able to catch all of the ink that we're putting over top of it, and kind of helping them, like forcing them to the surface. All those fun little details will be, forced to the surface. And then we're further going to highlight those details with a couple of different metallics. Now, we're not going to get to the metallics until probably like around the 11-minute mark. So if you're like, I don't care how you ink blended, I just want to see the metallics, that's okay. Just jump ahead. It's cool. So on my last video, I had told you guys that my camera had died. Well, it is confirmed. We can hold a funeral. My camera's gone to be with Jesus. And even my wonderful husband, because he knows technology is a struggle for this girl, which is ironic since what my job is. But anyway, he looked at it and was like, yeah, I think it's pretty much a goner. So I think what it is the LCD screen, because that's the part that is freezing every time I hit the record button. So he and I both looked online. Very, very sweetly, he took his time to look to see for a camera for me, and we ended up he found one that was local, that was in stock, and they were open until 8 o'clock last night. So last night after dinner, Peanut was like, hey, can I go with you? And I was like, yeah, sure. So we headed up to Best Buy. They had one on display, so I was able to check out the camera. Here is what I've learned, which makes me so, so sad, like all kinds of sad. As I am recording my videos, I pause my videos a lot, because I just leave the camera on and let it run. And then I pause it when I know, like, let's say I'm going to be doing like a ton of die cutting, and like all of that doesn't need to be filmed, because I'm not going to leave it in the video anyway, because it's boring. So I will pause it, and then that way I can come back to it without having to have all of these little like cuts of files. You cannot find a video camera anywhere that carries a pause button. it's just not a thing anymore. It's gone. Now, one of the reasons I saw somewhere somebody had explained, like, you know, if something happens during the pause section, the file isn't closed and then you'll lose the footage, and that's why they don't offer pause video, like, to pause them. But it makes me really sad to lose it, because now I'm going to have all of this, like, little teeny tiny footage that I have to splice together. But it is what it is. But I actually, like, in looking for one that had a pause button, there was a bunch of parents who were like, you know, I go to my kids' games and I want to film my kids' games, and I use the pause button so that I don't have to film the whole game and I can just film, you know, certain sections of it. And I don't. Like, my oldest isn't super into sports. He played basketball for a while, but then he decided that he didn't want to anymore, and he had finished out his season, so I'm not going to make him, you know, as long as he's met his commitment in that season. And I was like, that is an excellent point. Like, excellent point, that they cannot pause and they have to now film the entire game if they want to. Or they then, when they're editing, have to splice all these little tiny pieces together. Very interesting. But anyway, it doesn't have a pause button. Couldn't find it. And then also, this one has a micro SD versus a standard SD card, which I, again, do not love, because I feel like that is something teeny tiny that will be very easy for me to lose. But, so I did have to buy a new one of those as well. I was very lucky that they had them in the store. So today I spent my day kind of learning my new camera. We don't have any videos with the new camera yet. This one was with the old camera. Like I said, I made it a full-on month ago. So it will be interesting to see. I have 2 other videos that I intend to put up that I shot with my old camera, and those will probably be the videos for the week. So we probably won't be seeing new videos with the new camera until maybe around this weekend or Christmas. So we'll have to see. All right, we're finally to the metallic. So the first way that we're going to do the metallic, you've seen me do this before. I think it's an excellent way to add really any kind of color to your 3D embossing folders, but especially metallics. And I'm using the Altenew. This is I think the antique gold. I also have the enchanted gold, so it could be either or. But picking it up with a brayer and just rolling it right over. Super fast, super easy, great coverage. Here's the second way we're going to do it, which I think might be my favorite way. This is the metallic watercolor palette. There's 14 colors. This is from Altenew. And we're going to paint it. I know it's not watercolor paper. Don't fear. It's totally okay. Because we're using a thicker concentration, because we don't want this to run. We don't want it to act like regular watercolor. I've just sprayed sprayed the pan so that there would be some moisture. And then I'm going in, I'm using I think this is a number 2. It might be a number 4 brush from their detail set, their detail watercolor set. And I am just adding this beautiful, beautiful metallic pigment right over top of my embossing. I ended up using the jade for the leaves. So this is really great because, like, with the brayer, you pretty much only have one color option. But here you can totally customize it. That's why I picked to do it with the butterfly, because it's allowing me to pick the colors for the different things. So my leaves are a different color than my butterfly, then a different color than, like, the wings versus the body. This was fantastic. I love the way this card came out. So I used the jade, I used the bronze, and I used I think it's the rose quartz is the other one that I used. And was super, super happy with the way that it came out. So basically, you want it to be a little bit of a thicker consistency. You don't want to paste, but you don't want it to be really, really watery. You can do this on watercolor paper, by the way. Like, if you're more comfortable with that, you totally can. But I wanted to try it on regular cardstock because that's what the majority of us have. And then when I'm adding the color, in order to maintain the blue and, like, the deepest parts of the embossing, when I'm putting it on, I'm going the opposite way. So I'm going like against the grain. So if on my leaf, the veins are coming out from the top left to the bottom right, I am painting from the top right to the bottom left, which is not going to put the paint down into the embossed area or the debossed areas. It's going to allow it to sit on top of the embossed areas. And it worked really well, guys. Like, really, really well. And even for, like, the butterfly, because not all of the butterfly is embossed, just kind of, like, the details of it are. I was able to go in, again, it's not a very large paintbrush, but I was able to go in and paint right over those areas, and change the color of it, his body, his antenna, without really getting any of the paint into the background. Just use a really light hand. This is an excellent way to add metallics to your 3D embossing. And I'm sure that I will do it again in the future because it looks fantastic. Like, just a really, really great way to individually color all of your images. Whereas before, I struggled. I've tried colored pencil. That was really unsuccessful. I've tried alcohol ink, like markers. And that does work, but it's very challenging because as it absorbs into the paper, it bleeds. And so you have to be super light-handed. And even for somebody like me who uses alcohol markers all of the time, it was still a challenge to kind of keep it in the lines. This worked much easier for me. And it's got all that fancy metallic. Would this work with regular watercolors? I would presume so. I know that I think it's their 36 pan, Altenew's 36 pan watercolor set is a bit thicker type of paint. It is a bit more opaque. It's not as translucent as your typical watercolors. So those would probably work really well. So just some things to think about depending upon what you have in your stash. I love that I have another way to use my metallic watercolors because before this, I really only ever used them on dark colored cardstock because on a light colored cardstock, you kind of miss the wow factor from the metallic. So while I had my watercolors out, full disclosure, I also used them to create spatters in the background. So for this one, I chose the bronze color that matches the body, and I just splattered that in the background. And then I'm going to go grab that poinsettia that we did the gold with, and I'm just going to use, I think they have a gold, which one did I use? I think I used the enchanted gold for the dots, like the spatters, the spatters. And then I also use them to just add a little bit of brightness to the flower centers. So this is, again, you can combine these, the Brayer put down a ton of gold ink really quickly, but if you want something to have a little bit more gold, or there's just an area where you're not getting as much ink as you want, you can always go in with the metallic watercolors and add to it. For this one, which we haven't even done the metallic yet, I went in with it's called sterling silver. It's like a frosted white, and did some background splatters as well, just while I had them out so that I wasn't having to go kind of back and forth. Speaking of this card, the third way that we're going to add the metallic is these pens. This is a Zig Wink of Stella pen. This one is white. You'll see as it dries like a more opaque white. These come in all kinds of colors. Another option is also Nuvo glitter pens. They come in all kinds of colors as well. I know they have like a Midas gold, which is a great one. But they even come in like blues and purples and all kinds of different ones. If you're not confident in your ability to use the watercolor, if it's not something that you have, or maybe something you don't want to invest in because you're like, I won't use it for anything else, this is a great alternative. Plus, you have a ton more control because these are brush markers, so they have brushes. Now, as I was doing this, the white wasn't as bold as I wanted it to be, and I'm gonna be honest, I think that's because my pen is so old and it's almost out. I actually had already bought a new one and it was in the mail to me by the time I was doing these, but I thought I had enough left in my marker to make it work. I don't think that was necessarily the case, but I will try it in the future with different colors. But because of that, I'm going to combine the techniques. So this is the Cloud White Pigment ink from Altenew. I went in with the Brayer, hit the high spots, I'm going to dry that to make sure that I'm not going to be like smearing around the ink, because I'm only going to put the glitter portion on the berries. I'm not going to put it on the leaves and all of that. So we'll have like kind of a flat white on the leaves and then this glittery kind of metallic frosted white on the berries. And I was really happy with the way this one came out. I think green and white is beautiful together. But again, like I said, they have all different colors and you absolutely could use whatever. They have a red. You could, you know, go in there and make your berries red, and that would be a really great way to contrast them. So here's what we're working with so far. This is all the metallics put down. From here, I'm going to go in and add just a couple of little highlights with a white gel pen. I'm going to do that on the center of the poinsettias. And then I am going to, for the butterfly, I'm actually going to go in and inside, like the inset portion of the butterfly wings, I'm going to outline them in white. This was a little bit time consuming, like it did take me a little bit of time, but I felt like it really helped the butterfly wings to kind of stand out on their own outside of the background, so they didn't look completely transparent. And I was happy that I did it, even though it did take me a little bit of time. For the berries, I'm just going to go in and take the white gel pen kind of right around the edges just to add a bit of a bolder white color. And these just help them stand out more against that dark background. Because these inks are so richly pigmented, I'm going to use them to create my shadow is what I'm going to do. So I'm just going to take my darkest color. That was the Sapphire, the, what is this? Forest Fern, and then the darkest one for, is it Plum? It's Plum. And this is the same white cardstock that we've been using, that Neenah 80 pound. And I'm just going to rub my ink pad right on there. I'm going to let it dry. And then I'm going to take the shadows. This is the Versatile Gradings 2. This one's really great. It's got a lot of good ones in there. And I'm going to take the shadow portion and cut them out of this matching colored cardstock. So everything is going to be super matchy-matchy, which, you know, makes my heart happy. And then I'm going to cut out the actual sentiment. I chose gold for the happy birthday because it's going to go with the poinsettia, white for the sending joy. I also chose white for the prayers, but I'm not going to leave it white. So I'm going to go in. I have that blue, that sapphire shadow. I'm going to add the white. Now you could totally paint them before you glue it down, but I didn't want to risk that it was going to warp my words with any of the moisture, so I glued it down beforehand. And you could also leave it white if you wanted to. That would be fine. Or they have other you know, I use the brushed gold, but they have other metallics that you absolutely could use. I think they even have a rose gold. Did I use it? I don't know. I did not. But so here, I'm going to go back into that metallic watercolor palette, and I am going to use the bronze, which is what I did the body and the splatters with, and then I'm just going to paint this right over the white. It's totally solid. It's completely opaque. Is it as metallic as it would be on like a black or a navy blue or a plum? No, it's not. But it is metallic enough that it brings everything together, because, you know, that's the colors that we have put into the card. And it's also a really great way to be able to customize your white cardstock to be metallic with something that you already have. And for something this small, it doesn't take a lot of time at all. Just painted right over top of it, and then it's done. And it'll be all shiny and metallic and beautiful. So there's that. And then I'm just going to go through and I'm going to put the rest of the sentiments on. So yeah, anyway, so we got the camera, and now I'm just going to have to try it out. Like I said, I probably won't have a video with that camera till this weekend or maybe after Christmas. We'll just have to see how this week goes. But I am apprehensive because today, when I was like getting everything set up, it looks dark. it looks really dark. And so you have to keep adjusting the exposure, and the monitor doesn't look the same as it does on the SD card. And so I kept trying to, you know, have to go back and forth. Didn't love that. Didn't love the back and forth, but it was necessary, unfortunately. So hopefully I can find the sweet spot, and then everything will just stay the way that I leave it, and we won't have to mess around with it anymore. But as we all know, you know, we all know and love what we're comfortable with, and that's what we like. And, you know, that camera was 10 years old, and I just have to let it go. So, with that said, these are all 3 cards. I hope that you learned a little something and it inspires you to maybe add a bit of metallic to your cards. Thank you so much for joining me. I always appreciate your time, and I will catch you guys on the next video. Bye.